The journey to Ozymandias had been a long, silent scream through the void. For 6 standard years, the exploration vessel Wanderer had stitched its way across the interstellar medium, a lonely needle pulling the thread of humanity's insatiable curiosity. On board, Dr. Elias Vance felt less like a pioneering xeno-archaeologist and more like a parcel, tagged and shipped to the galaxy's most enigmatic lost and found. He was a man built of tweed and tempered skepticism, his face a roadmap of academic battles won and lost, his eyes holding the weary glint of someone who'd seen too many wonders to be easily impressed. This time, however, was different. This time, he had a feeling his capacity for wonder was about to be violently mugged. Ozymandias didn't have a sun in the traditional sense. It orbited a white dwarf, a shrunken, geriatric star named Narcissus 9 that bathed the planet in a perpetual silver-blue twilight. From orbit, the world was a masterpiece of ochre and rust, a canvas of endless desert, punctuated by the skeletal remains of a civilization that had clearly thought very, very highly of itself. As the Wanderer's shuttle, the Shelley, screamed its way through the thin, nitrogen-heavy atmosphere, the true scale of the ruins began to assert itself. These were not cities, they were geologic events. Mountains had been hollowed out and turned into hives of silent, cavernous structures. Canyons were crisscrossed with bridges so delicate they looked like fossilized spider silk, yet they were kilometers long and wide enough to land a starship on. And spiraling up from the rust-colored plains, reaching into the upper atmosphere like a god's own toothpick, were the space elevators. Dozens of them. Shattered, yes, but defiantly, impossibly tall. Elias stared at the main view screen, a grim smile playing on his lips. It seemed the previous tenants had a bit of an ego. He could appreciate that. The Shelley touched down in the shadow of one such fractured tower, a plume of fine, reddish dust billowing away with an unnatural slowness. The landing struts settled with a groan that echoed in the profound silence of this dead world. On the comms, Kalen, the ship's pilot and resident gung-ho enthusiast, let out a low whistle. Gods above, Elias, look at the size of that thing. The energy requirements to build one of those, they could have boiled an ocean. Elias unbuckled himself, his joints popping in protest. Yes, well, they don't seem to have any oceans left to boil, do they? Let's try to avoid following their lead on that. The team consisted of 4. There was Elias, the mission lead, whose job was to make sense of the glorious, silent dead. Kalen was his opposite, a man of action who saw problems as things to be solved with either a plasma torch or a swift kick. Then there was Gina, the exogeologist, a woman who could read the history of a world in its stones. She was quiet, methodical, and currently staring at her sensor readings with an expression of deep, professional confusion. Finally, there was Corbin, the tech specialist, a young prodigy whose nervous system was seemingly hardwired into the ship's data core. He was their ghost in the machine, their digital oracle. Stepping onto the surface of Ozymandias was like stepping into a cathedral. The air was cold, thin, and carried a scent like ozone and old stone. The ground wasn't soft sand. It was a firm, gritty dust that crunched under their boots. Yet it was not entirely dead. Life, tenacious and strange, clung to existence here. Gnarled, metallic-looking shrubs with roots like black iron wiring etched patterns into the crystalline ground, drawing some unknown sustenance from the alien geology. Small creatures, which Kalen immediately dubbed glass-shelled scuttlers, scurried between the ruins, 6-legged animals whose carapaces looked like geodes, glittering with internal crystalline structures. They were the inheritors, the scavengers picking at the corpse of a god, having adapted to a world that should have been utterly sterile. "So," Kalen said, his voice a low rumble in their helmet comms, "what do you think got 'em? Supernova? Nanotech plague? Did they just get bored and upload themselves into a cosmic hard drive?" Elias didn't answer. He was watching a glass-shelled scuttler nibble at the base of a ruined wall, its crystalline shell shimmering in the silver twilight. They were here to solve the mystery of a powerful civilization's disappearance, but a colder, more immediate question was beginning to form in his mind. How in the sterile, silent wasteland did anything at all survive? Their first foray into the ruins was into a structure that seemed to be a central data nexus. The entrance was a perfect, yawning archway 100 meters high. Inside, the silver-blue light filtered through vast crystalline windows, painting the cavernous interior with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The floors were a seamless dark material that absorbed the light, giving the impression they were walking on a frozen night sky. Corbin was in his element, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface of his portable scanner. The alloys, Elias, they're not just complex, they're dynamically stable. They're rewriting their own molecular structure in real time to counteract entropy. This place isn't decaying, it's just waiting. As they moved deeper, they found the central data cores, crystalline pillars the size of ancient redwoods, glowing with a faint internal light. Corbin's initial scan revealed the same frustrating anomaly. The cores were active but corrupted, broadcasting a single low-frequency hum that overrode all other data. But as he worked, Jenna held up a hand for silence. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Beneath the pervasive hum of the planet, there was another sound. It was faint, rhythmic, and distressingly organic. A soft, wet chittering noise, accompanied by a scraping sound. It led them away from the main chamber, down a narrow corridor to a sealed door that irised open at their approach. The room beyond was small, a sanctuary of sorts, dominated by a single smaller data core that pulsed with a purer, cleaner light, and huddled at its base was the source of the sound. It was the last survivor on Ozymandias. It was a creature of heartbreaking frailty, a thing that could have been a pet, or a servant, or perhaps a living record-keeper. Part insect, part mammal, it had a thin, almost skeletal frame covered in what looked like patchy gray velvet. Its large, liquid black eyes, ancient and exhausted, fixed on them. It had no mouth, but its feathery antenna twitched feebly, and it was from its frail chest that the wet chittering sound came, the sound of strained, difficult breathing. With one of its 4 spindly limbs, it was slowly, methodically scraping a film of the red crystalline dust away from the base of the pure data core. It was a janitor at the end of the universe, fighting a losing battle against the dust. The creature showed no fear, only a profound weariness. It looked from them to the core, then back again. It lifted one of its delicate limbs and pointed a clawed digit at the core, then at Corbin's interface. It was an invitation. I think it wants me to access it," Corbin stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's been protecting this one, keeping it clean." As Corbin gently interfaced with the pure core, the creature, which Elias had mentally dubbed the Lamenter, laid a hand on his arm, its touch as light as a dead leaf. As the data stream opened, clear, uncorrupted, and full of unimaginable knowledge, a shimmer ran over the Lamenter's papery skin, a sympathetic resonance, perhaps. The effort, the contact with outsiders, the sudden flood of energy from the core it had guarded for millennia was too much. Its feathery antenna stiffened, turning to ruby crystal stems. The velvet on its skin hardened, flaking away to reveal a glittering, faceted surface beneath. The The chittering breath stopped. A single black tear welled in its eye, rolled down its cheek, and solidified before it could fall, clinging to its face like a perfect tiny quartz teardrop. Before their horrified eyes, the last living, breathing thing of the old world succumbed, its body transformed into a beautiful, tragic crystal statue. Shaken, they retreated from the nexus. As Kalen stood guard, his jovial demeanor gone, Jenna knelt on the ground. She stared at the glass-shelled scrudlers and then at a sample of the red dust in her kit. The horror of what she'd just seen inside connected with the anomaly that had been bothering her for days. "This isn't sand. It's not eroded rock. I've run a dozen spectral analyses. Every single grain is identical. They're perfect, uniform crystals." She looked from the dust to the silent crystalline statue of the lamenter they had left behind.
The death of the lamenter had changed everything. The mystery was no longer an academic puzzle. It was a visceral, immediate threat. Armed with the data from the Pure Core, they now had a complete planetary map from the time of the ancients. Corbin cross-referenced it with their current topographical scans. One location stood out, a city named Xylos, located deep in what the map called the Sea of Shards. According to their scans, that entire sector was now one of the flattest, most featureless deserts on Ozymandias. A lost city. The words now carried a chilling weight. The journey in the Tunneler rover was different this time. The landscape, once mesmerizingly monotonous, now seemed predatory. Every grain of red dust was a reminder of the lamenter's fate. The low hum of the planet felt like the purr of a beast that has caught a scent. When they arrived at the coordinates for Xylos, their screens confirmed what their eyes could see. Nothing. Just more of the same flat, shimmering desert stretching to an impeccably straight horizon. Kalen summed it up with a grim finality. "Well, there's your answer. It got eaten." But Jenna was staring at the deep-ground radar, her face pale. "No," she whispered, her voice tight. "No, he's wrong. It's here." She projected the radar feed to the main screen in the rover's cockpit. Elias felt the air leave his lungs. It was all there, a kilometer beneath the surface, perfectly preserved. The deep-ground radar painted a ghostly, three-dimensional image of an entire city, towers, bridges, plazas, all intact, all buried under a solid, uniform layer of crystalline dust. It wasn't that the city had been buried by shifting sands over eons. The images were too perfect, too clean. There was no sign of collapse or erosion. The city was entombed, like a fly in amber. "It's not a desert," Jenna said, her voice barely audible. "It's a crust, a new layer of planetary crust." She began to pace the confined space of the cockpit, her movements sharp and agitated. "Think about it. The uniform crystals, the constant low-frequency vibration, the lamenter. The desert isn't growing on top of the world, it's replacing it, from below." She pointed a trembling finger at the radar display. "That city wasn't buried, it was submerged. The surface level of the planet rose, slowly, methodically, and swallowed it whole. What we're driving on isn't the original surface of Ozymandias, it's the top layer of something else." A sickening realization washed over Elias. He thought of the planet's name, Ozymandias, a king's works who's destined to be swallowed by the lone and level sands. He had always thought it was a fitting, poetic name. He had never considered it might be a literal, geological description. Corbin, who had been silently running calculations, looked up from his console. His face was ashen. "Elias, according to the original survey maps, the base of the space elevator we landed next to, it should be 300 meters taller." The retreat to the Shelley was a frantic, silent affair. The endless desert, once a canvas of alien beauty, now felt like the skin of a monstrous, sleeping beast. Every crunch of the rover's wheels on the crystalline dust was a fresh jolt of terror. Back in the relative safety of the shuttle, Corbin, driven by a new, feverish intensity, returned to the main problem, the corrupted data cores and their planet-wide hum. He now understood. The hum wasn't corruption. It was the final state. It was the song of the devourer itself. He reasoned that the full story, the warning they were meant to find, must be encoded within that hum. Using the pure data from the lamenter's core as a key, he designed a filter to isolate the original broadcast from the overwhelming drone of the planet. He was peeling back the crystal to find the fossilized voice within. And then it came through. The final broadcast of the original inhabitants of Ozymandias filled the shuttle's cockpit. It wasn't a warning. There was no screaming, no desperate plea for help. The voice that spoke was calm, melodic, and filled with a profound, soul-crushing weariness. It was a eulogy. A holographic figure flickered into existence, a being of impossible grace, identical to the ones depicted in the art inside the Nexus, and a chilling echo of the frail lamenter. It was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. Its face had no mouth, yet its voice echoed in their minds, a direct, telepathic translation by the ship's computer. "If you are hearing this," the voice began, "then you have come to the world that was once ours, and you have discovered the nature of our long sleep. We do not know who you are. We can only hope you have the wisdom to leave." The being gestured, and the space around it filled with images, simulations of a vibrant, thriving world, of cities that glowed with life. "We were a proud people. We conquered the atom, we tamed the stars, and we built monuments to our own cleverness. We saw the changes in our world and we named them. Tectonic adjustment, recrystallization. We are masters of geology, we told ourselves. We can manage this." The images shifted. The vibrant cities began to dim. The oceans slowly receded, leaving behind the shimmering crystalline dust. We were fools. We were trying to manage a tide by commanding the moon. The change was not happening to our world, it was our world. A life form not of flesh and blood, but of silicon and time. It operates on a timescale that makes empires like ours seem like the brief, frantic fluttering of a moth. We called it the Slow Devouring. The holographic being looked directly at them, its luminous eyes filled with a sorrow that transcended millennia. It was the same look Elias had seen in the eyes of the lamenter. "We have become one with the crystal. Our consciousness is now a part of its slow, dreaming thought. We are at peace. Do not mourn us. And if you value the integrity of your own forms, do not follow." The message ended. The hologram vanished, leaving only the low, omnipresent hum of the planet, the sound that was no longer a vibration, but a voice. The voice of the thing that had eaten a civilization and was now patiently waiting for dessert.
Silence. The eulogy of a dead civilization hung in the air of the Shelley's cockpit, thicker than the nitrogen atmosphere outside. 4 humans sat frozen, the architects of their own doom, who had cheerfully flown a picnic basket into the maw of a cosmic horror. It was Kalen who finally broke the spell, his voice a dry rasp. "So we're standing on a planet-sized monster that's currently digesting an entire civilization, and we just rang the dinner bell." Elias could only nod, his usual sarcasm having been sandblasted away by the sheer existential dread of their situation. He felt a sudden, absurd kinship with the glass-shelled scuttlers outside. They, at least, knew their place in the food chain. Then it happened. A tremor, deep and violent, rocked the planet. It was not the familiar shudder of an earthquake. It was a smooth, liquid motion, like the entire world was a muscle tensing. Alarms blared through the shuttle, a symphony of useless panic. "What was that?" Kalen yelled, already at the pilot's console, his hands flying across the controls. "It's the ground," Corbin choked out, his eyes glued to the external sensors. "The area around the ship, the energy readings are spiking. The resonant frequency it's focusing." Gina was at the main viewport, her face pressed against the reinforced plasteel. "Oh gods," she breathed. Elias joined her, and the sight that greeted them stole the air from his lungs. The ground around their landing struts was shimmering. The dull reddish dust was transforming, coalescing. A slow, beautiful, terrifying tide of crystallization was rising up their ship. It wasn't erupting or exploding. It was growing, like frost on a window pane. Intricate hexagonal patterns spreading outwards, climbing the landing gear with a patient, unstoppable grace. The hum of the planet intensified, a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to be coming from inside Elias's own skull. The World Eater had noticed them. It had found a new, undigested morsel. "Kalen, get us out of here, now!" Elias roared. "I'm trying," Kalen grunted, his face beaded with sweat. "The landing struts are fused. The ground it's absorbing them. I can't get a retraction sequence to engage." He pushed the thrusters, and the Shelley groaned, straining against its crystalline bonds. The ship tilted, a horrible screech of tortured metal echoing through the hull, but it didn't lift. They were anchored to the surface, a fly caught on a geological fly trap. Their final logs became a frantic, real-time recording of their own digestion. The calm, professional cadence of scientific discovery descended into a raw stream of consciousness, a testament to the end of 4 small lives. "This is Dr. Elias Vance, mission lead. The Devourer it's taking the ship. The crystallization is halfway up the main fuselage. We are being eaten by geology." "Gina here. It's beautiful. The lattice structure is flawless. It's converting the hull, atom by atom, remaking us. We are becoming one with the crystal." "Get off the comms, Gina! Kalen, overload the reactor. If we're going down, we're giving this thing the worst case of indigestion it has ever had." "Corbin, can you hear me? The comms are... The final echo. Do not mourn us." The lights flickered and died. The ship groaned its last, a long, drawn-out metallic sigh as its structural integrity failed. In the chaos, Corbin, fumbling in the darkness, activated his helmet's external camera feed just before a final violent lurch threw him against a console and the world went dark. His helmet, dislodged, rolled off the command deck, down the emergency ramp that had been forced open, and clattered onto the crystalline ground outside. The final transmission from the Wanderer expedition was not a voice. It was a silent, 5-minute video file. The view is from the lens of Corbin's helmet camera, lying on its side on the shimmering reddish surface. The shot is skewed, showing the underbelly of the crippled shuttle being slowly, inexorably encased in glowing, growing crystal. The hum is the only sound, a deep, pervasive thrum that vibrates the very lens of the camera. Then, slowly, from the edge of the frame, the crystallization begins to creep across the camera's own lens. A delicate, beautiful, hexagonal pattern spreads inwards, like a snowflake forming in reverse. The world is obscured, piece by perfect piece, until the entire image is a mosaic of red crystal. The signal holds for another 30 seconds, transmitting only the image of its own blindness, before it too is subsumed. The hum continues, unabated, in the profound, patient silence of a world that is still very, very hungry.